So The Boy and the Heron is Hayao Miyazaki's return to cinema after over a decade in retirement. The legendary animator is back with a feature that is similar, I think, to a lot of his older work. In parts, carries a lot of similar themes, but uniquely features a looser narrative space, almost more of a dreamlike kind of place to tell our story. Our story is of young Mahito, a young boy who is quickly moved out of Tokyo during the war following the air bombing of a factory where his mother is unfortunately tragically killed. He and his father move out of the city, into the country. It opens just like any other good Miyazaki movie with a kid in transition to a new place, right, that they can't control. Mahito travels out there. He meets his new mother. He meets the grannies and the people that live in this wonderful old place. And just across the field, he sees this odd tower that his granduncle had built, he finds out. And it's traveling to that tower where he sees a gray heron, right? A symbol of death, something that feels like maybe it's almost kind of related to these feelings, these dreams he has of his mom and this tragic fire. And it's following that heron into the tower where Mahito travels to a world of the living and the dead and has to discover like what a sense of renewal is and how that affects his worldview and embracing the chaos. Many of the themes you find in a Hayao Miyazaki picture, but in a uniquely different way. And I'm excited to talk about this because it's not just Hayao Miyazaki doing a film. This is Hayao Miyazaki growing and changing. It's semi-autobiographical even. There are characters in here that feel like Miyazaki today. There are characters in here that represent, I think, a younger artist, right? Up and coming, growing into a world where they want something to change. I'm really excited to talk about this feature with you, Andy. But first of all, what did you think of The Boy and the Heron?
So this is one of Miyazaki's, I think, most challenging works. It's kind of grown on me over time. It's definitely something that takes a lot of introspection and thinking about, and it's kind of a vegetable movie where it's like it's doing your homework. It's challenging to watch and get through, but I think it's very interesting to talk about afterward. It's been very divisive. Some people either love it or kind of are confused by it and don't know what it's about. I'm a little bit in the middle, and it's growing on me, but it's definitely, I think, Miyazaki's most complex work, and I've seen the majority of his films, and they're known for being whimsical, being, you know, easy to digest, relatable for kids, and this one is not that. I think it's very complicated. I think kids would be confused. I know adults that are confused, but it has a lot of the staples that we've come to love. It has these fantastic worlds and characters and deep, complex themes, and a lot of it is about Miyazaki's life. It's him coping with his own elements and tragic elements from his own life. Like his mother was killed, or she died when he was young. His father was the director of an airplane factory. That's why you see so many airplanes and birds and throughout all of his films. It's a big theme. So I think overall I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a challenging watch.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what works in Miyazaki films is present here. And more importantly, the first half of the movie reflects a lot of those previous features. There are tons of things that jump out to you that feel like old movies. Mahito arriving out in the country to escape wartime and go to school there is right out of My Neighbor Totoro, right? It is the same. It also is just like Spirited Away, finding this like tower place with these like 4 stained glass pieces where it's like, oh yeah, don't go in there. That's not good. That'll take you somewhere else, you know, like same thing. And then once he ends up traveling into it, he travels through kind of a portal to the world of the undead, just like Spirited Away, his biggest feature. Our character is injured, similar to Princess Mononoke, and suffers the feeling of like hate and malice, like from the war and from what's happened to his family, like in the same way as that feature. The thing is, about halfway through this movie, once we start to travel into the world of real and unreal, those lines blur a bit. And before you know it, like we get almost an abstract dig into Miyazaki's frame of mind about the end of legacy, I think. Not only about love and lost, but loss and wishing for something better, but like the end of like your career. There's a character particularly in the film who is a bit older and a bit wiser who is seeking a successor. And that feels really reflective of Miyazaki, who's coming out of retirement to make this film. Wind Rises was very autobiographical. Wind Rises was his last film. That film was about his father, or a character like his father at least, who made airplanes, this beautiful thing, but for war, like this terrible result, right? Like, and this film carries that too, that same thing, just like Mononoke and Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro. But I think because it starts so grounded and gets so blurry by the end, I think a lot of people leave the theater with a sour taste in their mouth. You know, I for me, it was definitely weird. I was like, the credits rolled, and I was thinking, are the people sitting next to me going to have liked this as much as I did? Because it's definitely odd. It becomes some bold cinema real fast.
Yeah, I think it's a film that would actually get better on rewatch. I definitely scoured the internet for some analysis for some insight into it. A lot of it I had figured out. A lot of it I kind of hadn't, but kind of knowing more about what it's about, I think would help a second viewing. It's interesting. Kind of the catalyst of the film is when when Mahito goes to school in this new place, but he kind of stands out because his father drives him to school in a big fancy car, and all the kids make fun of him and taunt him. He ends up getting in a fight, and he ends up self-harming with a stone. He literally just bashes his head with a rock and has this big injury, blood everywhere. And like this is what I mean. Like, this isn't really for kids in a lot of ways. And so it starts with this self-harm, which is indicative of, like, kind of the self-hatred, or just frustration at the world around him. His mother has died. His father has married his aunt. They have a child on the way. He kind of hates all this change. He hates her. He hates where he is. And so his journey through the fantastical world is kind of him deciding, is he going to continue on with that, or is he going to choose a different way to live? Which is the original Japanese title is How Do You Live?
Yeah, which it's funny. I love the title Boy and the Heron, but after having seen it, I almost wish it had just hung on to that, because I think it's slightly more profound. But one thing that I think is really special about Boy and Heron is the animation. I can tell you with confidence, Hayao Miyazaki has not lost a step. I cannot believe how complicated some of these very basic sequences turn out to be, simply because of dedication to the craft. In a time when streaming and television and movies and TikTok is coming at us a million miles a second, and people are learning how to make content faster and quicker and better and easier, and using AI to generate whatever, it is uniquely profound to watch a film in a theater by somebody who is so dedicated to taking the time to hand animate every single little bit of something that it feels like you're watching people make the pyramids. Like you're watching something from a time that isn't around anymore. Nobody takes the time to make stuff like this studio does. And it does it under the direction of Hayao Miyazaki. Now, it is not all hand-drawn. It is not all watercolor backgrounds. There are some digitals, which I think is good, because ultimately that helps us get where we're going. And in a lot of cases, it's not particularly noticeable at all. If anything, it can be used to enhance your experience, like having rippling water in the background, or like a portal kind of something just out of focus that just kind of looks like it needs to. Ghibli's been experimenting with this in a lot of their work with Amazon Prime television shows. They made a couple of the small things, but what really works is what's in the foreground. And this is going to be our characters' hair, wind passing through our characters' hair and clothes. And not only that, but fabrics, designs on fabrics, which is wild. There's scenes in here where you have a number of characters running around, all who have clocks or gears or little plus and minus signs on their robes, and there'll be 8 of them on screen running. And I'm just like, oh my God, every single one of those designs had to be moved on those fabrics by hand, by frame for every one of these, Birds are a huge thematic element in the film. Not only do we have our Heron, and we need to talk about voice acting in a second. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Regarding the Heron. Birds. We have all of these parakeets. We have these incredible creatures. We've got these pelicans. These little soul things that look like they fell right out of any other Studio Ghibli feature. Feathers. Birds have feathers. Feathers are exhausting to animate. Like, there's so much work poured into the experience that I feel like a lot of people, just don't even see. Because it's like watching any good movie, the magic of the film brings you in, and before you know it, you forget. Sorry, I've talked way too much about the animation. It's fantastic. The movie looks great.
Right. Before we move on to voice casting, I want to talk a little bit. One thing that I didn't really realize at the time, but this movie invokes a lot of kind of portal worlds, for lack of a better term, things like Alice in Wonderland, the Chronicles of Narnia, that kind of going down the rabbit hole, going to a new world and being navigated by a host that may not, may not be entirely on your side, but it kind of has those fantastical inspirations, which is really interesting. Uh, this is one of the few Japanese films which that has a stellar English American or English voice cast, that we're going to get into. We have Christian Bale, Gemma Chan, Robert Pattinson, who as the Gray Heron, which we'll talk about more in a bit. Mark Hamill, Karen Fukuhara. If you watch The Boys, that's where she's in that show. Florence Pugh and Willem Dafoe and Dave Bautista. So a really stacked cast for the voices, and Robert Pattinson doing this incredible voice for the Heron. Like, he's unrecognizable, and it's this really grating. It sounds like it probably hurt his voice to do. It's amazing. I'm not going to try and replicate it. And apparently that's what the Japanese actor also did. And so Robert Pattinson wanted to do bring that same energy to his character.
Yeah, incredible voice cast. Not only because you're using like really great current talent that you can advertise on, but also because you have a lot of returning actors from previous works. Christian Bale is back from Howl's Moving Castle. Florence Pugh did one of these movies. I can't remember which one. I know Mark Hamill was in Castle in the Sky. He's the bad guy in Castle in the Sky. That one's way older, but he's back. And Pattinson, like I'm sure there's voice acting awards somewhere, but if there was a category at the Oscars, he'd have it. There's no question about what he's doing in this movie. It is incredible. We've talked about Pattinson's great voice work before. The Devil All the Time on Netflix. Delusions, right? His work in The Lighthouse. Incredible. I know my man can do accents. This is another level. Like, nobody ever doubt Pattinson in a voice cast. Good God. If anything, if you see Rob Pattinson in a voice cast, you should be excited because he's going to go all the way. Incredible voice cast. Like, everybody's fantastic, including not newcomer, but our lead Mahito, played by Luca Padovan. He's done some TV, nothing particularly exciting, young kid, but does a fine job holding it up. Otherwise, tragically, I don't know if I have much more to say about this feature. Did I mention the music? The music's incredible. Joe Hisaishi. It's nominated for a Golden Globe. Don't know if you've heard that. You did. We talked about it like last segment, but stellar music, stellar colors, stellar direction. I don't know if I have much more to say about it. Andy, what do you think?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Boy and the Heron?
I would, with some caveat. I would, because it is an incredible, like, masterful animated story, with one of our greatest living directors of film, not just animated film, just film in general, who is in the twilight of his career. He's like in his 80s, and he says this is his last film. We'll see, because he's retired like 3 times before this. So we'll see. It might actually be. So for those reasons alone, you should definitely check it out. I will say it is a challenging watch. It is long. It's a full 2 hours. It's a little slow. I think it's got a long first act, and it's a little all over the place. It's kind of confusing. It's very metaphorical, very symbolic. It's going to make you think a lot, but I think it's an incredible film, and he's an incredible director that you should challenge yourself to go see.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Born Heron's great. I think if you're a Ghibli fan, you will enjoy it. Just don't walk in thinking you're watching Spirited Away 2. Because, I mean, again, even for parts of it, it feels like it's going that way. It's intentionally subversive. There's even a very explicit scene where a character is traveling into the tower, like in Spirited Away, and they intentionally go a different direction. Like, I think if you go in with the idea that you're seeing something that is uniquely different, even though it will at times feel similar because of Miyazaki's return to themes like nature and renewal and war and chaos and malice, I think you'll come out with something really special. I think Boy and the Heron's really good. I think time is only going to look kindly on this feature in his library, in his body of work. People will only grow on this movie. Boy and Heron's great. Please go see it. And please listen next week when we're talking about, what movies are we talking about next week, Andy? What are we talking about next week?
Wonka, the Willy Wonka prequel film starring Timothy Chalamet. This is supposed to be a big deal. It's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of positive reviews are out. So we're going to be looking at that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're also going to be looking at Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things, starring Emma Stone and Mark. I can't remember. Hulk. I'm drawing a blank. Anyways,
Ruffalo. Me too.
Mark,
I was dying.
So kind of polar opposites, because Wonka's definitely a fun family film that's probably going to be a big hit, and Poor Things, like there's people walking out of the cinema, which is what I always want to see. If people are walking out throwing up in the aisles, that's what the movie I want to go see.
That's right.
But and we might be doing our top 10. We'll see. There's still a ton out. Releasing the week after, on December 22nd, are Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Anyone But You, which is the rom-com starring Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Howerton.
Glenn
Campbell.
Glengarry. Yeah. Always be closing.
The Iron Claw, which we're really excited about, which is the Von Erich wrestling film starring Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, and I can't remember the other one. That's supposed to be a huge...
The kid from Triangle of Sadness. Boy, it really starts to blur together.
Harris Dickinson. That's
God,
right.
We're such bar trivia. Yeah.
The Iron Claw. So that we're really looking forward to that. American Fiction with Jeffrey Wright, and Migration. So that's 6 releases, all on December 22nd. Some of those might be limited to just New York and LA. And then Christmas Day, The Color Purple and Ferrari are also opening. So a bunch of movies still to come out. So we might wait on our top 10. We might not. We'll see. But that's what next week looks like.
I tell you, I am tragically overhyped for Poor Things. I have not heard a single poor thing about it. Even when it's like people walked out, like, oh God, that gets us salivating, right? Like, that's what you want to hear. Wonka, meanwhile, let me tell you, I probably was underhyped because I wasn't really excited for that movie. But not only do you have your Paddington director, Paul King, back, critic reviews are incredible. They're saying Chalamet's amazing. It's overselling in Europe. It's overperforming. Like, all signs point to Wonka being a banger. And remember, when you're thinking, wow, I can't believe Wonka did so well, you heard it here first on Off Script when Andy said it 3 months ago that he thought Wonka was going to be a hit. So, hey, man, that's why it's important to listen to you boys about what's going on at the movies. And we talk about it every single week right here on Off Script Film Review. If you want to keep up with us and keep up with what we're talking about and hear our exciting opinions and maybe some movie news, right? Who's winning the Golden Globes or who might be taking the next Oscar home, the best way to do that is subscribe to Off Script Film Review on your favorite podcast app, on your favorite, I was going to say your favorite video app, but it's YouTube. We're on YouTube, and we're on great things are happening on YouTube, by the way. You should come check it out. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all the usual places. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. You might even be listening to one of us on one of... You might even be hearing us on one of those apps right now. There it is. And I should wrap it up because I'm starting to get tongue-tied. We're on the web. We're on the internet at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com, and offscriptfilmreview.com is our website where we post interviews and other stuff and exciting things going on. From all of us at Off Script, it's a fine outro. It's a fine outro. From all of us at Off Script,
go
see The Boy and the Heron. From all of us at Off Script, the home of old cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.